Learning from Normal Work podcast with Dr. Marcin Nazaruk.
Welcome to the podcast that helps safety practitioners take real-world action. I'm Dr. Marcin Nazaruk, and today we are talking with Thomas Koester from Noble, an oil and gas drilling contractor, about his challenges to apply learning from normal work in practice. Thomas, welcome. Please tell us a few words about yourself, your company, and some of the key challenges that you faced and how you overcome them.
My name is Thomas Koester, and I work for Noble as human factors specialist. I work with investigations, with operational learning, and with human factors and safety in general. My background is that I, from academia, is as a psychologist, and I have worked as a human factors practitioner and professional for the last 23 years in different industries, in transportation, maritime, railways, road, in hospitals, in process and production industry, and in oil and gas. Our first challenge was that we wanted to find an alternative to learning from failure. We already had a regime for learning from failure in the organization. We had investigation of incidents and accidents about our drilling rigs. We had a procedure for how to start investigations, decide what level of investigation to be used. We also had procedures for setting up the investigation team, how to plan the investigation, what methods to use, and we even had templates for the investigation report. We also had templates for how to present an investigation team meetings and guidance on how to conduct the meetings. So this setup was already working and in use, but we did not have a similar approach to learning from positive practice and to learn from safety as capacity. So the challenge was to develop such an approach. What we see here is that our focus when learning from failure, learning from adverse incidents, was only on a very tiny part of what is happening on board the rigs. We wanted to not only focus on when failure happened, but we also wanted to learn from everything else happening on board the rig, which is fortunately most of the time. The bell curve here represents what is going on board the rig. We can see that there are some variations. Something are average in performance, something are very good in the top of the performance, and something is maybe in the bottom of the performance, that is the failures and adverse events. We wanted to find a method to learn from not only the failures, but also from all the positive and successful work going on board the rigs.
So how long have you been on this journey for?
It started in 2020, but it started at a time where we had some difficulties because it was in the middle of the COVID crisis. So I would say that our journey, as it looks now, with onboard studies, started in a year ago in August 2022. But we have been preparing this for a long time. We just didn't have the opportunity to travel around the world to get data for our studies and to visit rigs.
Excellent. So I understand that you've managed to develop something.
Yeah, and what we did in the first place in our journey to find an alternative to learning from failure was that we tried to look at studying positive practice like we already investigated failure. So our first assumption was that also to make it easier to communicate about this, that we could investigate positive events the same way as we investigated negative events like incidents. This would help us speak to people that speak the same language as other people in the organization, because they knew about this investigation regime, they knew about the investigation paradigm. So if we thought we could link this vocabulary of investigation to studying positive events, we would already talk the same language. We also thought that we could use some of the same methods, like, for example, we could do a root cause analysis on a positive event, like we do an incident. But we could also see that maybe these methods, which are a little bit linear in their way of looking at things, might not be good enough for understanding more complex events. So, and this applies both to positive events and to incidents. But we also looked into this, that maybe if we use the same logic that we use when studying incidents on our positive events, we could have some advantage from that.
And
But
I imagine that part of this process required changing how you speak about safety, changing narrative about safety. Can you tell us more about the challenges that you faced with that aspect?
Yes, so it's exactly as you say. There's a narrative about safety in the oil and gas industry and in our organization that was about, and that's a tradition. It has been so for decades that safety was the absence of incidents. That is the also how safety is measured, and this narrative. We wanted to move away from this narrative and create a new narrative. And we can see that typically the discussion about safety was around something happening by mistake, a failure, an incident. Then it was presented, discussed. There was lesson learned from it, but we wanted to change this. We wanted to change this approach and this narrative, and instead talk about what is safety as the presence of a capacity or the presence of a quality in the system, rather than the absence of incidents. And because I think it's a very good way of illustrating this idea. This is a very old Volvo ad. It's probably from the beginning of the 1990s, so nothing new about that. But the way this illustrates safety is very much aligned with the way we wanted to talk about safety. First of all, we acknowledge that incidents can happen. If something bad happens, we need a system that is strong and resilient, that will protect what is most valuable in the system, like in this car, the driver and the passengers. So it's not about having zero incidents, zero accidents. It's about if accidents happen, we are sure that there are no damage to people or to environment. You might have some equipment failing and being damaged, but that can be replaced. This perspective of safety is about building capacity into the system. And in this Volvo here, the capacity is you would say the car's ability to absorb the energy from a collision, but still protect the people inside the car. That is a one kind of capacity. And we wanted to talk about safety in our organization the same way that what we put into our system on a daily basis, what people do when they work, the technology they use, the way they interact, etc. That is also all kinds of different capacities they put into the system, and that makes it the system strong. So it's like they are putting up small safety nets, different places all the time, and making a strong and resilient system. And that is what we wanted to talk about, because that's a good illustration of how people on an everyday basis build capacity into a situation. I will explain what we observed here. So it was on our first visit on board a rig, doing our studies and observations, and one of the first thing we observed was that during work on the drill floor, we observed that people would work in a certain way that would bring safety into the process. What is happening on the drill floor is that you have a moving equipment, very heavy equipment. You will have also pipes that will be lifted up and assembled and then used as part of the drilling process. So the drill floor is an area where there would be a high risk of injury if something happened with this equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, there's an area called the red zone on the drill floor where you're not allowed to have any people working inside the red zone when there's equipment moving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the way you work there is because you need to go into the red zone sometime to do something. So you work in the way that when the equipment is moving, you go out of the red zone, and then when the equipment is at standstill, you can go into the red zone, do whatever you need to do in there, and then leave the red zone again. This is all controlled by the driller, who is sitting in a control room setting called the driller's cabin, observing what is going on the red zone and on the drill floor.
Mm-hmm.
The driller is in charge of having people going in and out of the red zone. So it's very important that people are out of the red zone when the equipment starts moving, and that they have left the red zone before the equipment moves again. But when they leave, they go out and wait for the next time they need to go in, and it could be a few minutes they're waiting, and what we observed was that they didn't use this time just to relax and chat with each other, but they used it actively. They observed the equipment, they observed the moving technology inside the red zone, they observed their colleagues, if there were anybody going in the red zone, and they also maintained eye contact with the driller and the driller's cabin.
Mm-hmm.
So they have, in this situation, changed passive waiting outside the red zone to an active waiting where they are constantly updating their situation awareness. They are monitoring the equipment. They are ready to use the stop the job authority. That means that they're ready to say something is wrong and then communicate to the driller, you need to stop now, we need to intervene.
Mm-hmm.
They are also ready to stop other people from walking into the red zone. And the way they are acting here is when we talk to them, they were not really aware what they did, because they said this is just part of our normal routine. This is not just part of our normal practice. This is just what we do. So this was you would say a tacit knowledge, something that they had or a culture they had built up on this rig, and it was adding safety. The way it adds safety to the process is that if you have people out on the drill floor observing, then you have people observing equipment from another angle than the driller. So maybe the driller, maybe if there was a malfunction, maybe a hydraulic hose getting caught or getting loose or whatever, then it might be in a blind spot for the driller. It might be in a blind angle where the driller is not able to see it. So therefore you have more eyes and ears which are in a safe area but close to the action that could react if something happens.
And so we started with showing the Volvo ad as a simple example of safety as capacity, a car as a system that can crash and still accommodate the damage and not injure the passengers. So now, if we compare that with this example, what's the equivalent on the drilling floor of the Volvo capability to withstand crashes?
The equivalent is what we call out of harm's way. That means that if let's say a pipe is dropped from the derrick, then if we're sure that there are no people in the red zone, then this pipe will only maybe it would be damaged, maybe there would be damage on the drill floor, but we are sure that people are out of the red zone, so there are no harm to people. We call it out of harm's way, and that is also, you could say, in any kind of lifting operation, that we need to make sure that there are no people underneath what is lifted. So there will be no people in the line of fire who could get hit, but if something breaks and if something falls down, there will be no people underneath it. So therefore, it is extremely important that there are no people in the red zone when things are moving, because that is when there could be a risk that if something breaks, it could fall down and hit people. So that is the equivalent to the energy absorbing construction of the Volvo, that in this case, people will be protected because they are out of harm's way.
Excellent. And so you mentioned this was one of your early experiences, one of the first visits where you started noticing those capacities on the shop floor. Were you able to turn this into some sort of method or a system to learn from those positive practices?
Yes, we had that opportunity. So our challenge was that we had to develop some kind of method to learn from positive practice, and we already had these methods to learn from incidents, but we had to build a new regime or a new way of learning from the positive events. And there could be different roads to take here, but I decided, because I was designing this method or this process, to base it on my long experience as a human factors practitioner, because I worked with different industries over the last couple of decades. And I have observed work in different contexts. I have observed what the people in the front line were doing on board ships, in hospitals, in trains, in control room settings, etc. And I knew from this that if we wanted to get information about these situations, like the one I just described with the red zone and the drill floor, we couldn't just ask people about it, because they might not even be aware about what they did in the situation. We had to go out there and observe it. It could be tacit knowledge for them. It could be more or less automated routine operations, which they were not aware about. I already got a feeling about that when I did you would say a remote study in 2020, where it was very difficult to get people to explain when we asked them, what are you doing? How are you adding safety to this process? We just use our experience. The answer was yes, but what exactly do you do? They were not able to articulate it, because it was so much part of their routine. So we needed to go out and observe it. We needed to be there in the front line ourselves and observe people, ask them in the situation where it was fresh in mind, and get data from that. So our next challenge was that we had decided to use the rapid ethnography method, but we also needed to go out on the rig to do the onboard studies. So we had a concern in that context, because our observations would be of positive actions, positive behaviors, positive events on board the rigs. We were not going there to look for flaws and failures and non-compliance. But the people on board the rigs, they were very used to audits and inspections and people going on board to point out what the flaws are. But that was not our mission. So we had to communicate very clearly to the people on board the rigs what the purpose of this was, and we used this slide as a way to explain our mission, that we wanted to define safety in a new way. We wanted to learn about safety in a new way. We didn't want to study failure this time. We wanted to study successful work. We would record positive notes only. We would also like to talk about safety in terms of capacity, in terms of quality, rather than talk about it in terms of incidents and accidents. And that this would be our instrument also to improve safety, that we wanted to learn how to make strong processes, how to add safety to the process, to make them strong and resilient, rather than just fixing and patching the holes, preventing failure from happening again when something happens, the reactive approach. This was one part of our communication. This was also a very important tool for us and our communication with the crews on board the rigs, that we wanted them to be confident that we were not there to throw them under the bus. We were not there to make an audit or inspection. We wouldn't record failures and mistakes. We will probably, or maybe we will see some, but we were not there to record that. We would record only positive observations. This was to make sure that the people we were observing would be, psychologically speaking, comfortable about us being there, that they would feel the psychological safety of our presence, because we would come really close to them in their work situation. We would be the fly on the wall. We would be looking at them. So it was important for us that they were comfortable in that situation. We didn't go there to see a theater. We didn't go there to see them act as they expect us that we would like them to act. We wanted to see how they performed on an everyday basis. So to prepare that, we arranged calls with the onboard leaders, also with the local rig management, and we presented this to them. We talked about what we wanted to do several times, and we explained again and again, both before we went on board the rig as a preparation, but also when we arrived on the rig and met with people there, that we were not looking for failures or non-compliance. We would only record positive observations.
And how people reacted or responded to this new type of messaging?
There was a positive response, but surprisingly, there were also a little bit of mistrust, because this was, so you could say, disrupting compared to what they have been used to. So they thought that we had a hidden agenda. And that this was a cover, that we said that we were going to make positive observations, but in reality we were going there to look for something. We were just not just saying that, and it took us a lot of efforts to by explaining this, also showing our results to the people on the rig before they were convinced that it was for real, that we were there to record something positive. But then they also saw this as a you would say kind of positive reinforcement, that when we talk about that they do something good, they start to feel good about it and want to do more like that. So we wanted to reinforce the positive practice rather than suppress the negative practice. That was our philosophy, and that was also we got good feedback on that, because it was a contrast to what would otherwise happen when they always hear about complaints, they hear about incidents, they hear about investigations, something that was wrong. But here we are actually talking about something positive.
You've prepared the rigs. I completely understand how important it must have been to people be ready for this positive touch and overcoming the initial suspicion there. And I presume the time has come when you actually went to the rigs to do your observations.
Yes. We went out on the first rig, and we could see that because of this um, complete change in focus we had from looking at failure and non-compliance to looking at positive events, we could see that people were a little bit having a little bit distance to us. They were a little bit afraid that we were there with a hidden agenda. But to make them comfortable in the situation, it was important for us to first of all talk about our mission, but also to think a lot about how we would act when we were out there in the field. We wanted to take notes, photo and video, but if the first thing we did when going on board the rig was to put up a camera in front of people, they would not feel very comfortable about that. So we needed to be there. They need to be comfortable our presence, and we could gradually increase the fidelity of our observations. So it shows the system we would we were going out to observe. So this is illustrating with these 7 nodes that we are observing. Of course, we are observing people and their actions, but we are also observing their interactions with things like technology, environment, the processes, the organization, even society and culture. It could be rules and regulations from society and culture, for example. So what we this was a guide for our observations that we use this illustration here, guiding our observations, that we looked for what happened within these nodes, but we definitely also looked for how were the interactions, how would the people build strong interactions with each other, how would they interact with technology, etc. So we went out on the first rig. We had decided that we would like to focus on the red zone and red zone management on the drill floor. The reason for that is that the red zone is a dangerous area. There is heavy equipment moving in that area. So there's a strict regime about that people are not allowed to be in the red zone when equipment is moving. And we wanted to see how is that practiced, how is that maintained in practice. What do they do? How do they orchestrate this movement in and out of this red zone? How are they arranging we call it choreography, because they have moving equipment, they have moving people, so it's like they need to take care of the choreography of that. So we wanted to know how they did it. So therefore our focus was on the red zone. But we also made observations on other types of works or jobs on board. For example, lifting operation. We also looked at maintenance, skidding operations, other different types of jobs. But our focus was in the first place to talk to people and explain about our mission, so that they were comfortable about us doing the observations, standing behind them in the driller's cabin or in the crane operator's cabin. And then gradually, from being the silent fly on the wall, gradually engaging in conversations with them, taking notes, maybe even ask them to reflect on their action while they do things. They ask them to think aloud about what they do. That would be extremely informative for us. So, and we also gradually introduced taking notes, photos and videos. First time I took up my notebook, I got the question, what are you writing? Are you writing some flaws or mistakes we do? No, I could show you here. And then I explained and told about that we're only recording the positive stuff and positive observations. So that was again an opportunity to explain our missions. And I observed together with I have a background in psychology and in human factors, but I observed together with my boss, Paul. He has a background as a marine engineer,
Mm-hmm.
and he has worked on board ships and drilling rigs for a long time. He also has experience as what is called OIM, the offshore installation manager, which is you could say the captain on board the drilling rig. We observed together. So he would have one perspective, I would have another perspective
Mm-hmm.
to what we saw. And then part of the rapid ethnography protocol we used for this is that we discuss our observations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just, I would say, it's not just recording only of observations, but it's also the discussion that we could maybe observe for 1 or 2 hours. Then we had a 2 or 3 hour session where we discussed the observations, talked about it from Paul's perspective, and talked about it from my perspective, what we saw. And from that we generated our examples and our data.
Excellent. So would you be able to share some examples with us from those early observations?
Yes, sure.
So if you could tell us what we see on this photo.
This photo is with a big zoom, so the quality is not that good. But this is an example of the way people communicate from the drill floor to the driller's cabin. What we see here is a whiteboard that is on one of the pillars on the drill floor. We see it from the viewpoint of the driller. The driller is sitting behind this fence here, and there's also a window looking out on the drill floor, and he can see this whiteboard here.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when they build when they connect different pipes to build the drilling pipe? They used different pipes with different serial numbers. There's a plan for that. So, and they communicate about it. So what they do here in this case, that they communicate on radio verbally about it, but they also write the serial numbers. And in this case, they have connected 3 different pipes. They write the serial numbers on this whiteboard because they know that communicating verbally, that information is not persistent. It's there when you talk, but when the communication is over, the information is nowhere but in the head of the driller and in the head of the people working on the drill floor. So therefore they make this information persistent. They also use a second modality of communication. So they have verbal communication combined with written communication. That is also a way of adding safety, because if they, for example, say 1666, but they write 1665, then the driller would notice that there's a discrepancy, there's something wrong, and then they can discuss it and solve the problem. So this is a way of making. It's like having subtitles on a movie. It's a way of making the communication more, I would say, more persistent. It doesn't disappear, and it also uses different modalities to create a kind of redundancy in this communication. So in case the driller forgets, he can look up on the whiteboard. So this is not rocket science. It's not a big sophisticated system. It's very simple. It's something that they have designed themselves because it is helpful for them in their practice. It adds safety to their work, and it's also an example that is good to discuss, because when talking about this, about human memory, how we might forget numbers, how we might not even hear them when they're communicated verbally, how they are only there in our memory for a short time when we hear it. Maybe we forget them. That applies to a lot of different situations. This is not only the situation with the pipes on the drill floor. It could be anywhere on the rig. We could use this principle of making using different communication modalities. So from from our perspective, when we saw that, it's very simple. It's banalities, some people would say, but it has a strong effect if you have enough of these small examples. Then you will create a strong system showing different dimensions on pipes. Let's see, you could say the diameter. These pipes have different diameters, and they have a color coding system for that to make it easy recognizable. Because if you only had the numbers on the boards, you might misread them. But if you combine numbers with colors or making them distinguished in some kind of way that you are able to see the differences more clear, then it's less likely that you mistake them for each other. So this is also a nice way of making the system safe, that it is designed by themselves, and we can see a lot of examples just by looking around in a driller's cabin for different ways the crew would design small solutions that are cheap and easily applied, but they have a big difference if you have many of them. It will help the system be safe.
Yeah, this is a great example, because typically we think that it's the engineering team or part of management responsibility to design and provide that work environment. But when we start learning from normal work, we actually see that people come up with solutions. And this is a fantastic example of how people who do the work designed a piece of that work to make it easier or to reduce the likelihood of mistake or failure. From my in my training, one section that I show or teach is what you look for is what you find, highlighting that our beliefs and preconceptions focus our attention on some things and not other things. And I was wondering what's been your experience with biases and observers mindset and its impact on what is observed.
You're quite right. That is an issue. This was one of our concerns, and also it has been something we have discussed throughout this whole project here. That if you are part of a system and observing what is happening in the system, it is likely there's a risk of bias. There's a risk of you being home blind. You don't see the obvious. But on the other hand, you have a deep understanding of the context and what is happening in the system. You have a first-hand perspective on the actions. If you are observing from outside the system, it's easier for you to be neutral and non-biased. It's also easier for you to ask the obvious questions and ask the stupid questions to the people you meet, because you're not expected to know. But it's difficult to ask if people you ask know that you already know it. So therefore, if you observe from outside the system, you are allowed to ask these questions. You have an incomplete understanding of the context, and maybe there are some things happening in the system that you don't understand. Why is it happening in that way? And what is some actions cannot be decoded because you don't know exactly how the system works. But what we took advantage of was in our rapid enography protocol that we set up this team of the we are both part of the same organization, Paul and myself, but Paul has an experience from working many years on board rigs, but I was going on board the rigs for the first time. So I was the observer from outside the system. He was the observer from within the system. And when we compared and discussed our observations, we could see that it was a very good source of data, because we had different perspectives. And we also noticed that there was a lot of things that I observed that Paul didn't even notice, because for him it was just a part of the wallpaper. It was just business as usual. So I could ask about something, and then he would say that well, he didn't even notice, because this is just he was just so used to this context that he wouldn't observe it.
I find your perspective extremely interesting, because you're looking at things that are going well. And so I've talked to, safety managers who said, okay, that's nice, but so what, right? There is just saying, okay, that's working well doesn't necessarily generate any improvement, or does it? What's been your experience with using your insights to generate learning and ultimately reduce the risk?
We first of all, this process we've been through, we didn't really know from the beginning where it was supposed to end. We were more or less building the ship while we were sailing. We wanted to test and try and make a proof of concept that we could go out on the rig, that we could collect information, that we could collect observations, but we didn't know from the beginning how it would work and where it would take us. So we have developed this gradually, and after seeing our results, we collected a database of 163 positive observations from 5 rigs. After seeing that, we could see also a way forward on how could this be used. How could these observations be transferred into a format where it could generate learning and generate improvements, generate more safety. It was very important for us in that process to look for a format that wouldn't be prescriptive. So we didn't want to go in the direction that we have seen that they do this on that rig, you should do it on all rigs, or everybody should do this. We didn't want to do it, use it in that way. So that could have been one option. But we wanted to use our examples as you would say, more a conversation starter, as a something starting reflection, that people would start discussing and reflect over the examples, and thereby also over their own actions, how they add safety to the process. That was our mission. We wanted a bottom-up approach rather than a top-down. We also needed to learn, or to test how would these learnings, in what context would it work best. We could see that it had an effect just putting these observations up in front of the people on the rig, because it was like placing a mirror in front of them. They could understand their own work by us showing them how we see what you do. So therefore they started reflecting over, for example, the active waiting outside the red zone. It wasn't really something that they discussed, or it was just business as usual. It was just what they did. But presenting it to them, it became you would say the subject of conversation. How can we do this more? How can we expand it to other areas? Why do we do it? How do we make sure that new people also are also trained in this? And then you could say that the discussion started rolling. How could we, for example, look for similar things ourselves? But we wanted to create a sort of, you could say, learning engine that will, when we started with our learning material, it will run by itself, fueled by the discussions, fueled by the contributions from the crew, from the front line. So to do that, we decided to go for two formats of learning material, and that would be the material used to trigger the further processes. This is a schematic illustration of our design. So we had the first 2 parts was to create and produce learning material. We went out on board the rigs, did our studies and observations. We collected observations. We used that to generate learnings and insights in the format of learning cards and positive examples. And then the next phase is to use these insights, use these learning cards, use these positive examples in many different settings, many different contexts on board. It could, for example, be to use a learning card in a toolbox talk. Toolbox talk is the discussion you have before you start a job about what are the risks, how do we mitigate them, who should do what equipment do we need, what personal protection equipment should we use, etc. But it could also be a situation where you pick up a learning card related to that job, for example, and then discuss it. It could be in safety meetings. It could be in different other contexts. But we also wanted this learning material, to be the fuel for learning teams. The way I see learning teams is that it is a bottom-up approach. It's a way of creating learning within a team, which is not traditional, you would say, classroom teaching, because it's based on the participants' own reflections, own discussions, own contributions. But the problem about that format is that if you invite a team of people into the conference room on the rig and say, okay, we're not going to discuss what is wrong, we're going to discuss what is strong, give me an example. Then people are taken out of their everyday context. They might not be able to come up with a good example because they're having coffee in the conference room, far away from what they do. So we could see these examples we collected as conversation starters in that context. So if you bring up an example, then you can start discussing. Then you have your own examples triggered, and that could facilitate the discussions in the learning teams. We could also see that our material could be used in training, for example, in leadership training, also in ramp-up of new crew, so that, again, using this bottom-up approach, using the material for them to discuss how they work, discuss the different ways they interact, etc. And finally, of course, the result should be a better performance, work being safe and efficient. We would also like them to reflect in action, reflect when they work, and thereby also build up capacity, continuously improving, etc. So this is the design, the idea. So it all started with us going on board the rigs, collecting these examples. But my ambition is that at some point this will be self-propelled, in the way that when people start using examples, they also start seeing examples themselves. And these examples could feed into our database that could help other people see other examples, etc. So if we just push this snowball, I believe it will roll and will become bigger and bigger, and we will have this learning material developed over time.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, please.
Maybe I should elaborate a little bit on the two formats, the learning card and the positive example. So
excellent.
This is how a positive example could look like. And if you look at the structure here, what happened, and then the analysis it's not far from the you could say the incident cases. It's not far from in format what we're used to from different meetings, from different presentations where you present and discuss incidents. The difference is here that we're not discussing an incident, we're discussing a positive event or positive example. So the way this is built is that it's based on our observation. It's based on that we observed what is described here and what happened. then we have our interpretation or our analysis. Why is it a good idea, and how it contributes to the safety? This is a positive example you can present.
So could you walk us through what we see on the photo, what's happening, and why this is a good idea?
Yeah. So in this case here, what we see in the photo is that people working on the drill floor, they have moved out of what is called the red zone. They're standing by outside the red zone and waiting to be called into the red zone again to work. And the reason why they need to leave the red zone is that they need to get out of line of fire in case something breaks and something falls down. They need to be outside the red zone. Then they need to go into the red zone to do the work, but they then need to leave again when the equipment start moving. So that constant movement in and out of the red zone is essential here for the safety. But what they did when they were standing outside the red zone was that they were not just passively waiting, just relaxing, talking to each other. They were actively observing the equipment moving. They were looking up in the derrick. They were looking up for if there was something about to fall down or break. They maintained eye contact with the driller's cabin. They also looked if there were anybody moving into the red zone at that time. So they were professional waiting outside the red zone. They were actively waiting. So they used the time to update their situation awareness. They also used the time to reflect on what was going on inside the red zone. And that is a good idea because they were, by doing that, they created an extra layer of safety, because the red zone is normally guarded by the driller. The driller is responsible for what is going on in the red zone, but the driller is located in what is called the driller's cabin, a cage or control room, and there can be blind spots, there can be blind angles, there could be something that the driller didn't notice because he was focused on something, and therefore there are also the eyes and ears outside the driller's cabin that will be able to spot defective equipment, failures, people walking into the red zone, etc. So that therefore is a good idea, and that is also how it contributes to the safety of the process. In case something happened, they're able to stop the job if it is necessary. They're able to communicate that to the driller, and then the driller will stop the machinery, and they are also able to stop people from walking into the red zone. Maybe if the driller is focused on the equipment, you wouldn't notice that a person would be entering the red zone in the background. So therefore there are extra set of ears and eyes outside.
And here we've got also part two. So tell us about this what you're seeing here.
So basically this is built on the same example, but the difference here is that what we have done is that we have removed our analysis, but instead put in some discussion questions. So the other one was a positive example. This was a positive example that could be an alternative to, for example, bringing up an incident in a meeting. You could bring up a positive example, but the learning card is for discussion. The learning card is to trigger the reflections of the frontline personnel about this situation here. So the what happened description of what is happening here is the same, but instead of our analysis, we ask the questions: why is it a good idea? That will prompt the people using this learning card to start reflecting on why is it a good idea standing and actively waiting outside the red zone instead of passively waiting. How does it contribute to the safety in the process? They can discuss it, they can reflect on it on their own, but they can also discuss it in a team, in a learning team setting, for example. BHA is for bottom hole assembly. That is a tool that is used way down in the well to do something there of technical nature. It has some moving parts that could be, you could say, remotely controlled, that could open and close down in the well. But this piece of equipment was being changed, so there were some mechanical parts being disassembled and then assembled again. And then the person doing that was asking a colleague to remind him about greasing a component before he assembled this piece of equipment. He remembered this himself, but if we ask the question, why is it a good idea? How does it contribute to the safety in the process? Then if you think about human memory, human short-term memory or working memory, that if you also do the same task, repeat it over and over again, it's easy to forget something in the process because you have just done it in the previous session with that piece of equipment, and then you might forget it. So what he does here in this situation here is that he built in redundancy. He asked a colleague, help me remember this because maybe I forget. So first of all, we're a little bit going back to the Volvo example. It's the acknowledgement of I could, there is a risk that I could forget, but I need to make sure in case I forget, it will not lead to a flaw or a mistake because someone else will help me and remember it. There's no point going out telling this person you need to be you need to train your memory, you need to be better remembering this. So what he does in this situation is actually much better. Rather than trying to remember himself, trying to build a strong system by interacting with other people. It's like the illustration I showed with people, technology, environment, etc. Earlier, that if you build strong connections, in this case he's using his colleague. Maybe he could have designed something, a whiteboard or something to help him in this situation. But his decision was to interact with a colleague about that, and thereby making the system stronger with this interaction, with this connection. In this case here, we have a rig with two red zones, red zone 1 and red zone 2. One is the primary, the other one is the auxiliary. So normally people will, when they are working in red zone 1, to get to a safe place outside red zone 1, they would move into red zone number 2.
Right.
Because red zone number 2 would be inactive. Red zone 1 active, red zone 2 inactive. That means that red zone number 2 is a safe place. They're going to do work where they move constantly in and out of red zone number 1. But this day, they're going to repeat this, going in, going out, going in, going out for maybe some hours. But this particular day, red zone number 2 was also active. So the problem here was that, and that was identified already in the toolbox talk by the crew, that maybe people forget that red zone 2 is also active and go there because they normally go there. So it's like they are maybe on their, you could say, mental autopilot. They just go to red zone 2 because that's what they normally do. So therefore they said it's not. You can see, maybe you can see in the middle of the picture behind the chain hanging down, there's a red line on the drill floor. That red line is the boundary between red zone 1 and red zone 2. But it's easy to not see it when you are working there. So they said, okay, because there's a risk that people are in mental autopilot, we need to put up what they call the stop and think barrier. So therefore, when you walk into this, you would start thinking, oh, why is this tape here today? Oh, by the way, this is because red zone 2 is also active. So they start to reflect about what they do. So I think it was a brilliant example of that people have identified, you could say, a risk of a mistake that could happen, and thereby they used, in this case, something in the environment they designed a solution that would trigger that the people would stop and think. They would stop and reflect, and therefore prevent them from going into red zone number 2 by mistake. What we see here is this is an illustration of what the driller's cabin look like. There are different people working in there. There can be a driller, an assistant driller, and also other personnel. And it is, as we say, a control room setting. This is a bird-eye perspective. They're sitting there in a chair with the controls, with the joysticks, with screens, but they also have the visuals, the windows to the drill floor. And there are people working outside on the drill floor, roughnecks, with different manual tasks there. And the driller is, you would say, coordinating or orchestrating this work by giving instructions, and they are receiving communication back from the roughnecks on the drill floor. What we observed here was a roughneck that was removing a protector of a thread of a casing, and then after that wrapping the thread in plastic wrap. So this is a routine job, but when he did it, he could have. There are different ways he could do it. He could stand with his back to the driller's cabin, but he decided to stand with his face to the driller's cabin. That means that he could have eye contact with the driller.
Right.
So again, the discussion here is, why is it a good idea? How does it contribute to safety? How can it be used in other situations? We have many examples like this about people thinking about where is it the best place to stand to do this work? From where do I have the best line of sight? From where do I have the best eye contact with the driller, etc.? So in this case here, the idea is that if you have an eye contact, it's much easier to pick up communication if something is wrong, rather than if you are standing with your back to the driller's cabin. You almost need to go out and poke him on the shoulder to get the attention, or call on the radio. Otherwise, you can just wave or use hand signals or gestures to communicate if you have this face to face. So it is you could say the face to face and eye contact is something that would support your communication, making the line of communication open, so it's easier to get the attention of people. This is also an example from one of our observations. This time it's not from the drill floor, but it is from the crane operator's cabin. What we noticed here was that they used the radio to coordinate the lifting operation. So the crane operator would communicate with personnel on the drill floor. No, sorry, not on the drill floor, on the deck where the different containers and cargo is located. That communication is through radio, but at that time, the same frequency or radio channel was used for communication about another operation, a bunkering operation taking place at the same time. And if you have communication about two different things going on at the same time, there is a risk of mixing up communication. So therefore, there's a risk of misunderstanding. So therefore, the crane operator asked for a separate frequency, because then he could be sure that he was not disturbed. Their communication was not disturbed, or there were no interference from other communication. This is an example of why this is a good idea. How does it contribute to the safety? That if you are aware that there's some kind of interference, some kind of disturbance that could be something that would maybe create a misunderstanding or a mistake during the communication, then you should do something actively to make sure that is filtered out, that you use a separate frequency, for example. We also saw something which is that was not about communication, but that was about how do I make sure that I'm able to see what's going on. Here is about how am I sure that I'm able to hear what is going on, because I don't want any interfering communication. But we could see, for example, the driller in the driller's cabin asking for a personnel to clean the windows from dirt and drilling mud, to make sure that he had a clean and a clear view to what is going on the drill floor. So sometimes it can be a little bit, you would say, it would require some effort from you to do something about it. In this case, the crane operator would have to ask for separate frequency. It's a little bit of problem. Sometimes people would maybe accept the disturbance, the dirty windows, the interfering communication. It's annoying, but it also requires some work to clean the window or to change the frequency. So it's a good discussion to have that sometimes it's actually worth the effort that you make sure that you have a clear line of sight, you have a clear radio channel, that you have no disturbances, that you have good communication, etc.
What would you say were the main benefits of this effort, and what would you say is better or safer now since you started introducing this approach?
First of all, I would say that this approach is about learning, and I would say that the team, the people engaged in this, we have learned a lot about safety, about how work is conducted on board the rig, how the crews are adding safety on a daily basis. So we are really the people who have learned most right now. But the what is still in the process of being made is a learning process out on the rigs. That is the next step. That we should facilitate that with our learning material, with our examples. We should be able to generate learning on board the rigs. But one thing I would like to highlight is that it and that has made a big impression on me also, is that from seeing what is done on a daily basis on board rigs, I see safety more and more as something that is created through very simple actions, very simple interactions between people, use of technology, co-creation of tools and equipment, etc. So it's not. I don't see safety as a big complicated system, something that is from top down, but it's I see it as something that is created all the time, like small safety nets that is used in many different contexts. That was a great experience to see how engaged the crews are, how involved they are in making their own job safe. And I think that what we can do now is that we can harvest that, we can learn from that, we can disseminate it in our organization and inspire other people to do similar things and to develop their own strategies, their own approaches, etc. If you ask about what are the results, what have you seen so far, I would say that having put this on the agenda, and also, for example, seeing from the first rig we visited in August 2022, today learning from normal work is part of their daily vocabulary.
Yeah.
This is something they do. They observe positive events, maybe 10 events per day, and it is something that is their mindset, in part of their mindset.
Yeah.
And that was one part of our mission, was to change this idea that when we talk about safety, is always about absence of incidents, and it's always about analyzing and understanding and learning from incidents. But we can see on board this rig, they are clearly also learning from positive events, positive observations, and they make them all the time on a daily basis. So it's adapted, it's integrated in their vocabulary, it's integrated in their daily operation. And that is, for me, you could say, also a proof of concept that this can work. They have taken what we have have done a year ago, but they have developed this further, and that has been great to see.
How is that different from behavioral observation, right? In BBS systems, you go to the field, you observe behavior, you recognize or reinforce positive, you correct undesired behaviors, right? And so you build from there. You also build data to support your observations and make decisions. I'm very curious, how would you describe the difference between the traditional approaches to behavioral observation and what you've done on your rigs?
I think that of course there's some sort of overlap because we also look at behavior, but I think our perspective is more to try to look at the system rather than the individual. And if you make behavioral observations, it's very much focused on the behavior of the individual, but I would like to see it as an entire system where people are a very important part of it, but it's also a system where we look for example, what does the technology look like? Is the technology supporting the safe work, or have they made modifications? Have they co-created? We could also see different examples of how they have created small solutions. That is not really a behavior, but it's more a design from people have designed something. So we're also looking at that. But you could also argue that it's more or less the same. But I would say our perspective is a little bit broader than just behavior. And I would also say that what we you could say my ambition is also that we instead of correcting behavior, I would like to see a approach that will correct the whole system. That will, but we're not there yet. But that will not only look at what can people do in another way, but also maybe how can we design our environments, our technologies, our equipment in a way that will facilitate the safety. I still think there's a long way to that, but it's also, you could say, the philosophy of safety differently. Rather than trying to design people, then try to design their work context, because people have been designed from evolution. It's the idea that you can change people, you can give them procedures, you can give them training, and then you will have them do what you want them to do, but maybe you can also support that with a good design of the work environment, with a good design of the tools they use. That it should be easy to do the right thing, so to say.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Thomas. It's been an absolute pleasure having you with us today. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your examples, your challenges, and how you overcome them. And I'm sure that many of our listeners will benefit from seeing this work being done in reality. So thank you so much.